Reddit by Reddit recap. What are some NSFW history facts that don't get taught in school? Catherine the Great had a parlor room filled with explicit, erotic furniture she commissioned personally. We're talking blowjobs carved into chairs, an end table where giant torrential cumshots were holding up a marble countertop, a woman getting eaten out by a demon on a throne. Homegirl had taste. Newton was so dedicated to his work and abhorred fun so much that many people believe he died a virgin at 87 years old. And by work I don't mean revolutionizing physics and inventing calculus. I mean alchemy. His main focus was turning lead into gold and making the philosopher's stone. At the Battle of Agincourt, most of the English archers fought pantsless because they had serious diarrhea and were literally shitting themselves as they fought. They won too. If you ever visit Prague, definitely go to the Sex Machines Museum. I felt so naive of how unaware I was about how horny we as a species have been since, literally, ever. The steam-powered dildo is a triumph of mechanical engineering. 12-year-old Pocahontas used to entertain white colonists with nude cartwheels. This is actually one of the few things we know about her that's indisputable. D. João VI, former king of Portugal, had a royal masturbator. Don't know if it's already been said, but Edgar Allan Poe married his 13-year-old cousin when he was very much older than her. Greeks were heavily into sodomy on both sexes. Women were only required to be virgins vaginally prior to marriage. Every other orifice was fair game. Early colonizers of the United States used corn cobs as toilet paper. Edit. This is now my number 2 comment. In the 12th century, a philosopher named Peter Abelard challenged the church teaching on sexual morality, pointing out that no ceremony of man could make an inherently immoral act moral. The act would have to be already generally moral. Therefore, sex before marriage really couldn't be considered a mortal sin. He fell in love with the wrong woman and had his nuts cut off. This made him angry and sad. He then wrote a book. The Egyptians used mice to help stop toothaches. The Romans used to use a sponge on a stick to clean their. The world's youngest mother was 5 years old. She went through puberty at a way early age and had a highly questionable father. In Aztec culture, avocados were considered sexually powerful and were restricted from virgins. Alexander the Great had 361 concubines, official prostitutes. 4 more and he would have won for every day of the year. Queen Victoria instituted a system of certifying prostitutes as syphilis-free. They were called the Queen's Ladies of the Night. Many prostitutes hung the certificate above their beds as a point of pride. Not necessarily NSFW, but pirates were one of the first people to have a healthcare plan of sorts. If you lost an appendage, there was a predetermined pay for everything that was lost or maimed. Also, there was a pretty large number of female pirates. For a time when women had little to no value in the workplace, they more or less had equal treatment and pay to other pirates. During the Age of Sail, anytime a large ship would come into port, the men often wouldn't be allowed shore leave for a few days, so you would see small boats packed with prostitutes heading out to the ship at mooring. Larger ships of the line would have over 500 men aboard, so there could definitely be a couple hundred ladies brought aboard behind the captain's back. And with virtually no privacy aboard, you would have spaces in the ship with hundreds of couples going at it at once. There were definitely a lot of captains that didn't allow any women aboard, so the sailors on those ships would just have to wait until they could go ashore. Anne Frank's diary talked a lot about masturbation, but most of it was edited out. There was a Greek general who was supposed to lead a major expedition to Sicily. The night before he left, he got wasted and walked around Athens with his other drunk friends and knocked all of the penises off of the statues in Athens. This caused him to be arrested. He missed the expedition and they lost almost all of the men they sent to Sicily because only he knew the plan well enough to pull it off. French President Félix Faure went out via death by blowjob from a mistress. Edit. Fixed spelling. The father of microbiology, Antony van Leeuwenhoek, was the first to examine semen under a microscope immediately after ejaculating in his wife. Henry VIE, aside from his 3 legitimate children, had at least 6 other illegitimate kids with various mistresses. There is also a suit of armor made for him on display, and the codpiece alone weighs 1.3 kilograms. Every time you read a city was sacked, pillaged, taken by force or what have you, it almost always means mass rape, rampant murder and an orgy of violence and debauchery. Enslaving a population also pretty much the same thing. Men would be killed, women and children would be abused, tied up and sold off to be abused even further until they were discarded. Human history is swollen with the sufferings of the common people subject to thievery, banditry, wanton murder and abuse at the point of the sword. We're a pretty disgusting species. In late imperial China, a concubine earmarked for sex by the emperor later at night would be pampered all day. When the night of the deed came, the palace servants stripped the girl naked, wrapped her in a silk blanket, and carried her to the emperor's bed to unwrap her there. This practice wasn't for imperial majesty's kinks, it was a security measure. Sometime earlier a concubine tried to assassinate an emperor during sex with weapons hidden in her clothing. Roman brothels had pictures of the prostitutes' specialties above the door to their room. The creator of the vibrator was George Taylor. It was originally made as a steam-powered device that was used to cure a disease called hysteria by massaging the pelvic region. Empress Wu Zetian of China asserted her dominance over male officials by making them kneel before her and pleasure her orally. For a long time royal European women gave birth in front of spectators, who would pour into the bedchambers to watch the babies arrive. Plymouth colony of British North America, New England convicted and hung a young man committing bestiality. It was one of the first hangings in the New World. The 16-year-old Thomas Granger was hanged to death for indulging in buggery with a mare, a cow, 2 goats, many sheep, 2 calves, an ostrich, allegedly, and a turkey as mentioned in the court report from 1642. His hangman was one John Holmes. Nelson Rockefeller, former vice president of USA, suffered a heart attack and died while having sex with his 25-year-old assistant. He was 70. Helen Palmer, the wife of famed author Dr. Seuss, was an excellent writer in her own right, though she is perhaps best known for her tragic suicide. Seuss had frequent affairs while Palmer was a faithful spouse and truly loved her husband. Seuss was absent through much of the turbulent part of her life, which was caused by disease including a battle with cancer. Her suicide note included this passage: "Dear Ted, what has happened to us? I don't know. I feel myself in a spiral, going down into a black hole from which there is no escape, no brightness, and loud in my ears from every side I hear, failure, failure, failure. I love you so much. I am too old and enmeshed in everything you do and are, that I cannot conceive of life without you. My going will leave quite a rumor, but you can say I was overworked and overwrought. Your reputation with your friends and fans will not be harmed. Sometimes think of the fun we had all through the years." Seuss would later say that Palmer's suicide made him feel worthless, which he admitted was more than deserved. Nevertheless, he married the very woman he was having an affair with. President Lyndon Johnson was obsessed with his and loved to show it to people. He called it Jumbo. The inventor of the bra had a pet whippet named Clitoris. The political smear campaign against Marie Antoinette involved a lot of Empress Wu Zetian made eating her out a prerequisite for an appointment. Ben Franklin was a super sex freak and loved to tell younger dudes to have sex with old women. Cleopatra did butt stuff. James Joyce wrote exceptionally graphic letters to his so. If you look up Edward Russell in history books or even Wikipedia, you learn about his military service, including Admiral of the Royal Fleet for some famous battles. What they don't teach is that he threw a party so epic it's still being talked about 300 years later. In 1694, he threw a party for officers, and with 6,000 guests coming, wanted to make it special. So, he made the world's largest cocktail, drained the garden fountain and used that as a giant punch bowl with hundreds of gallons of liquor, over a half-ton of sugar, thousands of lemons, etc. He hired bartenders to paddle around in boats, scoop it up, and serve it to attendees. At some point, It began to rain, so they put a tent up over the fountain to prevent it getting watered down. About a week after they started, they had drank every last drop. The fountain was dry, and the party was over. Best comment of the day. Official history. In Indonesia, Ken Eric, father of kings in Jawa, accidentally take a glance on Kenned's shining heel, then proceed to kill her husband, a lord, with a green lightsaber blade made out of meteorite. It literally can cut through anything with ease like a hot knife slicing butter, and take his position as a lord and husband. Her husband's son's clan and Ken Eric's son with Kenned's clan gruesomely killing each other with said green lightsaber blade for the rest of 7 generations a la Game of Thrones. Can't explain further. Too much graphic and gore. Real history. He accidentally see her shining vagina exposed and start our own Game of Thrones version. The cursed green lightsaber blade was thrown into a deep ocean to prevent another inter-house bloodshed.